So those last two races left me a bit bewildered, to be honest. From the craziness of Monaco, which seems to prove that Monaco is dead. Also, due to the fact that Max went crazy in Barcelona and kind of just drive straight into George Russell. And trying to analyze exactly what happened in those last two weekends. So let's get into it. This is F1 Fridays episode 13. And I would obviously want to start with the death of Monaco. Is Monaco really dead? Now, they did implement that two-stop strategy to hopefully add some sort of entertainment with the pit stops coming into play. It turned into a horrible watch. I think it was horrible for the fans and probably worse for the drivers due to the fact that teammates who were able to qualify next to each other were able to hold back the pack to build that pit stop gap. So basically, like Williams, you hold all the drivers behind, so your teammate in front builds enough of a gap to make a pit stop and come back out in the same position. They swap positions back and they do the same thing again. So we did see George Russell, for instance, get frustrated and going straight through the chicane, taking his penalty and just continue driving. It was honestly rough. Now, it is almost impossible to pass. We saw with Bortoleto and Antonelli, their small scrap. Bortoleto kind of overtook and then it turned into Antonelli taking over again and Bortoleto hitting the wall. Long story short, it was rough. Now, I do think getting rid of Monaco should be last resort. I think they should try many things before they just squash it. Obviously, we have new regulations coming into play next year. The cars are supposed to be a lot smaller. Does that mean it will be easier to pass in Monaco? Who knows? We have to wait and see, obviously. But I don't think we just squash it as of right now. Now, getting into... Now, these proposed changes were not ideas by myself. It's actually from the Grand Prix Drivers Association chairman. His name is Alex Wirtz. And he has outlined 3 feasible ways that Monaco could be improved to help overtake it. Now, keep in mind, the city or the Principality of Monaco is already undertaking a $2 billion expansion project to reclaim land into the water. So this is not far-fetched for them to do some crazy stuff to improve the actual track and improve the racing and maybe keep it on the calendar. Now, the first proposed change is moving the Nouvelle Chicane. Now, if you look at, I'll put the image up here, where they can move it approximately 80 meters to give the cars a bit more momentum and also maybe changing the curve a bit to make it easier to pass or make it possibly a passing opportunity. Keep in mind they will obviously have to go into the water to widen that entire area where you see the yachts. Now there's also another proposition of reprofiling Rascas. I think this is a little bit easier to make. If you see the drawing, it makes the corner itself a little bit wider, so you could maybe try to pass on the inside and cut the driver off a little bit, or even keep a little bit more momentum with the outside line. We also have the famous Fairmont chicane. Same thing with reprofiling the corner a little bit and trying to make it possible to pass. You'd see that it bubbles a little bit more. As of right now, staying in those 2 set lanes, it's very difficult to do anything. Now, these are obviously just propositions, but it is from someone who definitely has the right mindset, and I think they should be able to propose some ideas and see what is really possible. Now, I do love the nostalgia of Monaco. I do love the vibe of Monaco. Obviously, it's the glitz and glamour, and I do also want to point out that the qualifying spectacle of Monaco is unmatched anywhere else on the calendar. I think qualifying in Monaco might be one of the coolest things to see as a F1 fan. Even when you watch in the cockpit, it's crazy how close they are to the walls, the most minute details. It's so easy to mess up. And for instance, that lap that Lando put in was amazing to get pole position, and then he converted it into a win. So that's my personal opinion. I do think they should wait unless it's last resort to get rid of it. but they do need to definitely make some changes. That two-stop mandate did not help whatsoever due to the fact that it was still impossible to pass. Now, I'd like to get into the Barcelona Bacchanal. So we move forward to what happened last weekend. Now, it was pretty smooth, pretty straightforward. McLaren seemed to just be the ones to beat, and on great pace, Oscar Piastri was firing as usual, actually. And Red Bull decided to go on a very different strategy because they didn't have the pace. They had a three-stop strategy, and there was a safety car at the end, close to the end, with like 6 laps to go. And Max, when he went into the pits, they put him on hards. Now, he obviously asked what tire this is because it was not the best strategy to restart on hards from a safety car. And you could see him coming out of that first corner. He caught a crazy snap. He did save it, but those hards compared to the softs, well, just didn't have the grip. He did then kind of get touched by Leclerc, which I don't think was his fault, and then Russell was passing him and he just drove straight into Russell, which definitely is Max's fault. He did get a 10-second penalty, so I think he dropped from possibly 4th to like 10th, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a lot, he did also get points towards his license, and there's a lot of, I would say, people pushing to ask if he should have been disqualified. Now, I am, as you know, the biggest Max Verstappen fan that there is, and it was definitely horrible. I would say it was wrong. It shouldn't be the way we are racing. Now, back in the day, a lot of old heads would say, you know, you just run the person off the track if they're passing you. But I think it's very different nowadays, and I think the way everyone drives should be fair, and that wasn't fair. So it is what it is. It was definitely wrong. I think also due to the fact that it was him and George Russell. The whole scenario was crazy, but I don't want to take away the great drive that Piastri put in. He definitely deserves that win, and I think it goes to show that the driver of the day voting is a bit of a joke because Max Verstappen did win the driver of the day. So also keep in mind for fantasy scoring and fantasy points, I think driver of the day should be dropped. You should not be given more points for driver of the day because people just vote some crazy stuff. So Leclerc was able to capitalize on that entire issue with Max, and he did make a podium. Ferrari seemed to be doing okay. Hamilton struggled a little bit. He was even passed by Hülkenberg in the end. I would love to say props to Hülkenberg and Sauber. They were able to get 5th place, which I think is insane. And he shows that he still has it in him to obviously get the best performance out of whatever car he's given. So I would like to say big shout outs to both Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. And then my guy, someone I definitely support the Red Bull family, but I think Hajar is continuing to have an amazing season. Now, I do think he's in a very sticky situation because the better he performs, the greater his opportunity is to go to that Red Bull seat. And it shows that that Red Bull seat is a bit of a killer. As you see, he's still struggling, especially in qualifying. He was able to move up the pack and the safety car kind of hampered him, but the struggle is real. So let's see if Hajar could continue to perform throughout the season, but who knows what's next, which I think could be a bit problematic. Now, we move on to Stroll. Stroll did miss the race. He did compete in qualifying, and there are rumors that he threw a hissy fit after qualifying and cuffed the wall or something and damaged his already damaged wrist. As you know, last season he had to do surgery. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know what's real, so I'm definitely not going to talk too much in depth about that. But no reserve drivers were able to take up his place because he did compete in qualifying. So it was a bit disappointing. Aston Martin just had Alonso, and he did do very well for that race. Let's get into F1 Fantasy. Now, I would like to say you should probably follow Christoph and not my advice. I tried to make a few plays to go against the green by sticking with Williams. It was a horrible weekend for them. Props to him for sticking with Ferrari, and Ferrari came out with some good points. We did have the Albon DNF, which screwed me as well, and my strategy currently is not paying off. So hope we can sort that out by Canada. And also keep in mind, you want to look out to see if Stroll is going to compete or not, because you might want to make that change. Ferrari has been a bit consistent in the past few races, while Merc is having their reliability issues. We did see Antonelli's DNF again, and I think just keep in mind the tracks are going to be a little bit varied moving forward. So we also gonna have a lot of upgrades from, I think, the entire field, because you saw Sauber killing it last weekend and they were probably dead last in pace before that. So I think there's gonna be a bit of shuffling while the teams bring their upgrades, and kind of stay tuned to see exactly what plays out. Now, I would like to obviously say Piastri is definitely the one to beat. We did see Lando show up in Monaco, but Piastri seems to have the momentum moving in his favor, and he seems to be very level-headed. There's a small break, there's no race this weekend, but let's see how the midfield battle plays out. I think many upgrades, because we have this break weekend, are going to come in Canada and even moving forward. So stay tuned, play around with your fantasy teams in the meantime, and obviously wait till practice to lock them in. But I think it's going to be an interesting rest of the season.